Exactly. Guys, thank you so much for joining Scott Martindale with Blended Kingdom Families. And we are so excited again to have Dr. Cassie Reid with us. Wonderful, wonderful wife, mother, author, professor, LPC. The list goes on.
It's so sweet. Thank you.
It's great to have you. And we're going to dive into some subjects today that we are facing as a culture with COVID-19 going on, specifically as it relates to blended families. We know, I know through our ministry, we've received lots of messages over the last 2 to 3 weeks about some specific problems that blended families experience because of this isolation, because this is a health pandemic, and because, as you and I were talking about, this is the one time where there's the link that's between them, that now there's this facade of what wasn't affecting me is now affecting me. So thank you for being here. We're going to talk about those subjects today. But let's first just talk about a little bit of expansion of what we talked about in our last episode was COVID isolation. We're living in a world where we're isolated in our homes right now. So what surface level and things that can you bring up that families are experiencing today?
You know, I think families are really, like, all the stuff that we've kind of covered up maybe or hidden or kind of been able to like distract ourselves from, I'm seeing that bubble to the surface. It's like you can't turn it off, you can't escape it, like everyone's here. And so I'm seeing a little bit of that, and I'm also seeing it's sort of a breeding ground or a petri dish, if you will, for what you might need to work on. You know, so it's like areas that would cause triggers or would cause you to be frustrated or a little bit short. It's like, oh wow, that's you know, right at the ready.
Love it. And this is an isolation and it's an exposure period. You know what I mean? You can't go and hide behind anything. So not only are you not able physically to go to work or, you know, go out and sometimes blend with other people, but you're at home, you're exposed. So some of these issues are you're absolutely bubbling to the surface. And in blended families, it makes it even more challenging. I know you and I were talking in the back, and we were talking about, you know, in normal situations, we feel like as a blended family, we have this isolation family over here, this isolation family over here. There's only one small crack, then that's the period where the child goes between the two houses, and that little small crack is open, then it's closed, and my family's still okay, and families are still okay. But now with COVID-19, we're facing an epidemic where that is that connection between blended families can become the source of tension, because now when a child goes to the other house, then what they did at the other house is now affecting them. So we're seeing a lot of conflict being born out of that. So my question is how do you handle conflict between families? And what are some best practices for maybe the way you think about conflict now, and maybe ways to resolve that conflict?
Well, I first want to just say I love what you're saying, because I feel like that's almost a Holy Spirit revelation. So like kind of what he was saying about how you used to think there's just this sliver of time. There's just this place, like ours is McDonald's. We meet at McDonald's. So this like sliver of place where only our lives intersect for this 5 minute, when that's a fallacy, you know? And I love that you're saying that, because I feel like that's a Holy Spirit revelation of blended families that we've got to get, is that that exchange is not the only exchange that goes on. And we have to be aware of that for the kids. For the kids that are exchanging, like that we're expecting them to just, shed that whole thing, and then, shed our whole world, and just this moment
start another one over here.
Yes. And so I think conflict, one of the things that we have to do is I think we have to be honest about the root of conflict. Because so many times our conflict isn't about what the conflict is presenting. So I think, first of all, honesty about what it is. Like, is this me? Am I irritated about something that happened in our divorce proceedings 10 years ago that I'm now taking out on you and the kid and making you pay for? Am I irritated because you've moved on? You've moved on with your life and have more kids and have a different life, even if it's financially, emotionally, spiritually, and I'm still in the same place, or so it feels. So I think we've got to ask ourselves, what's the conflict conflict really about? You've got to be able to say that. I think another thing about conflict resolution is you have to say, what is my desired outcome?
Yeah.
Because sometimes for me, if I fast forward and I ask myself my desired outcome, it's not good.
Yeah.
Like, I want something from you, and I'm being manipulative, sort of, to get it. And so I have to squelch that. I have to say, okay, no, that's not how I'm going to get what I need. I'm going to try it a different way. I think conflict, honesty, and open communication are key. And I think that's hard sometimes in blended families. But I do think it's essential that we try to be as concise, precise, and detailed in our communication as possible. Lack of communication breeds confusion.
Absolutely. And I love what you talked about in terms of the desire of conflict. And I think a lot of people don't dig deep into this to know if your style of conflict is, I want to win, but just as important as I want to win, I want you to lose. You know, it's just as important that I win as you lose. Versus a conflict style is, I want to come to an agreement that is in the best interest of our entire family. So that self-acknowledgement of why am I fighting is a huge precursor to what the result's going to be.
Yeah, it's good.
But this sliver of crack that now exists is challenging the balance between health and consistent blended family interaction. So, you know, what we do at our house now affects, and people are keenly aware of that. I know in our blended family situation, we've had those conversations. We've said, hey, what are you doing over there? What are we doing over here? And is it consistent with what we want in the desired outcome of this situation, this COVID-19 situation? But I know there are situations with blended families where that's not the case, where one family may not be taking social distancing very seriously. One family may not be really great at homeschooling, which is a whole other situation.
That's a whole other podcast.
Exactly,
that we
a whole
have
other podcast. But there are those situations where one family's ideas of what should happen and the other family's ideas of what should happen are in direct conflict. But you can't always go at this and say, I'm right, you're wrong, do what I want to do. Because the other family could be like, no. This is what we want to do. And now you're stuck.
Yeah.
So you can either drive yourself into a corner and say, this is where I want it to go, and the other family says no. So my question is, to the viewers, is how do we approach those situations that we may not get everything we want, but we can get some things to make us feel balanced here?
Yeah. Okay, so you know what comes to me? The Chinese finger trap. Because you have to push to get it, you know, like like when you're striving to pull, if you've ever seen that, some people might have not, but like you can't, when you pull out, it only tightens, but when you push in, you can, and I think that's part of it is like, okay, what sword am I willing to die on? What point is adamantly like, I will not, cannot back down? And I think we've got to ask ourselves that for sure. I think another piece of it is how can I lean in? How can I make this better? Is it going to be better for my kiddo if I just say, okay, for this season, I'm going to let it be this way for now. Like, I don't, you know, it's so hard because it's like, what is the, you know, it's such a push-pull. So I think it's asking yourself, how can I lean in? What are the things I'm willing to lean into? What are the things I'm willing to say, okay. But then what are the things that I need you to lean into? Because I think what happens is exactly what you said. It's a right or wrong, black or white, 100% or 0%. It's never like, no, we're both like, okay, you want to isolate, you want to do it this way. That's fine. But we're doing it this way, and this is our choice, and both are right for us. And so how do we find that happy medium of what that looks like? And that make it sound so simple. Let me just tell you. I was just listening
to you going, man, that sounds so easy.
That sounds so easy, but I'm a blended family, and I know it's not so easy when you have someone, and maybe this is me working out my own stuff, but when you have someone on the other side who says, oh, sure, we'll do that. And then they don't do it. And then you're just like, it's frustrating because you're like, you said you would honor this for me, and then you're not. So then that's a whole nother deal of really, and what I found, to be honest, is and this is like just me going on a tangent maybe, but it's like, that's an issue there between my husband and his ex-wife.
Yeah.
That's her and a power struggle that has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with Lundy, my stepdaughter, has nothing to do with the two houses. It's totally a power struggle of, you're not going to boss me.
It's exposed at this point.
It's exposed.
So, again, I go back to this exposure. None of us can hide from this.
You can't.
And I love what you said. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. And I love the lean in part. I think so many conflicts can be dissolved if you approach the conflict by leaning in to listen first versus walking in with an iron fist and you lead off with a right hand and then you start talking. It's a completely different outcome versus, we know we're all fighting this battle together. We know we're all fighting some form of this battle, whether it be an actual health issue or it's a financial issue because we're all getting exposed to that financial hit. So both families are hurting in some way. So it's always best, and I put on my notes, it's an opportunity to grow together.
Yeah.
And I love that if we look at that way. And I know the devil loves this concept. He loves the idea that he's coming in and he's causing conflict between families and he's causing strife and he's hurting people and he's doing all these things. And there's opportunity to grow because there's opportunity to connect.
Yeah.
So if you can lean in to your blended family, show empathy.
Yeah.
Show grace.
Yeah.
Show mercy. Those are the tenets that make a relationship, which is what we've always talked about at Blended Kingdom Families. That there is a relationship to have.
Yeah.
It's great and it's perfect when God's in the middle of it. But this is that opportunity to do that. I want to shift focus just a little bit.
Okay.
Because there's other things that are going on that we have heard through our blended family community that, again, are exposure behaviors. We're very aggressive ex-spouses, very aggressive or passive-aggressive behaviors. And I know a lot of families are feeling almost paralyzed by decision because, again, they know that there's that connection. They have to communicate. They have to connect through the children. But, again, with heightened pain, heightened fear, heightened anxiety, all those things bring out behaviors that are just, they're just dangerous. So as you would talk to a family who's experiencing this with their blended families, what guidance would you give them? Nuggets of information would you pass along?
I would say you've got to slow down. You've got to slow down long enough to say, is this about me or is this about something else? Because when you kind of talk about the passive aggressive, like typically when I see passive aggressive behavior, it's about something else. Like I'm feeling out of control in my finances, or I'm feeling out of control in my job, or I lost my job, or whatever the COVID stuff might be. Yeah. And I'm taking that out on you because you've been my punching bag for this whole time. So it's easy. Yeah. So I think it's asking, what is it? Is this really about me? Sometimes I'm pretty direct. So I would say, okay, I see that you're upset, but I'm just curious if you're upset with me, if you're upset with our kiddo, or if you're upset about everything that's happening. Yeah. And so I just am going to call out, like, I see you, and I'm here for it if it's me. But if it's not me, I just wanted to let you know you're spilling it on everybody. Yeah. And so I just want to say that to you. And some families might not have that luxury to be so direct, but I think asking your spirit that, like really saying, like, what's my gut saying about this? Is this something that I need to really pursue? Is this a real issue, or is this an issue that's everything's being compiled? Absolutely. I think those are kind of just some things that I would say. I think, I think that's kind of, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think another part of this, in blended families, I know that we have a tendency to judge our relationships solely based on how the child is doing. So, and it can come granular. It really can. Oh, the child is failing math. Then our blended family is destroyed and there's strife and chaos. Yeah. And then it's all heightened because of all of this. And we lose sight of the concept in our blended family situation in COVID-19 that our children have been stripped of normality.
Everything.
Sports.
Yes.
friendships,
Yeah.
everything,
School. Yeah.
It's all been removed. And depending upon the age of your child, obviously you deal with different problems at different ages. But again, I go back to the exposed. It's all exposed in this environment because we are all together all the time and there's nothing to hide from.
Yeah.
So we do that, we look at those little nuggets and we're judging our children on these qualities or these benchmarks that they're not used to making.
Yeah.
And now the aggression comes out and you're not doing a good enough job. And by the way, most parents are not teachers.
Oh, help us.
Yeah. Bless all the teachers in the world.
Yes.
I'll never, ever say another bad thing about you.
Yeah, I know.
But we're not teachers and we're doing our best.
Yeah.
They're doing their best. But families don't always understand this. So the aggression comes out. So as you look at how to deal with children in these dynamic, aggressive behaviors, what advice and how would you tell families to work through that?
I think that there needs to be a place for kids to be heard. I think that we do a bad job because the relationship existed or dissolved maybe before, in a sense, and then here's this kiddo, is that we don't hear them because our emotions take up so much space. So I think it's letting them vent, letting them share, but letting them share without judgment. You were talking about that, and one of the books that I make my students read at the university is called How to Stop the Pain by James Richards. And you'll hate me for even mentioning it because once you start reading it, you're like, oh my gosh, like this hurts. But he talks about how no action or no thing has room to hurt us until we judge the motive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we do so often with the other side in a blended family is we're judging their motive. Oh, you did that just to irk me. Well, no, I forgot. I truly just forgot. Yeah. It had nothing, there was no maliciousness. There was no passive aggressive behavior. It was totally just an error, And I think for kids, sometimes they sense that and they get into this place where they have to be sensitive. And so I think one of the things you can say to a kid is you can tell me whatever you want to tell me. Yeah. It's safe. Like, I'm not going to go back and either tell the other side or it's safe. If you want to tell me something about me, like make a safe environment for them to talk. I think there's another piece of it. I don't care how old they are, sharing your own honest feelings. Now, I'm not going to be like, your mom or your dad's an idiot. You're not going to say something like that. But it's saying, you know what, it really hurt my feelings when, or hey, it really made me sad when this happened. Or hey, I was really mad when I saw that you didn't get to go back to school and you missed this party and you didn't get to, like, I'm sorry. Like, and so when they see your emotions, it's like, oh, wow, they made that safe. Yeah. And so I think making space for that. I think also I'm all for, and I get crucified sometimes for this, is I'm all for honesty. Now, to a degree that they can handle age appropriate. But I think kids are smart.
They are.
My 4-year-old knows, Mommy and Daddy, the other day we were having a conversation. And she said, are you fighting or are you just talking? And so I said to her, we're just talking loudly. But it was just one of those things, like we're in the house. We're all in the house all together with COVID, Yeah. So it's like, for kids to just know, like, hey, like I'm going to talk to you. Like you didn't miss that. So for me to be like, nothing's going on here, nothing to see here. It's all calm. It's like, she's 4, she knows. So what is a 14? My stepdaughter's 16. They know. Yeah. And so let's be honest about it. Yeah,
I love the honesty. I love the communication. And I love also the idea that you have to pay attention to what's going on with them emotionally. And I'll kind of tie that back to what I said originally, is blended families face these conflicts purely on the level of anxiety or failure or success of that child or children. So their whole level of conflict is designed around what is his his history grade? Or, is he back talking? Is he playing too many, or her playing too many video games? What is that? So the equation of our blended family is all a result of that child's interaction or behavior or how good or how not good they're doing. So pay attention to that. Yeah. Be leaning into your children and looking at those situations. I know that we have talked about other safe tools on previous podcasts, and I'm sure you're familiar with different, whether it's like My Family Wizard or ways that you can communicate that really, if you're facing that situation where you have a really aggressive communicator or somebody who just cannot get along or somebody who's in that situation, I'd also recommend finding a safe place to communicate.
Yeah.
You don't have to be,
right.
You can try as much as you want, but if the other side is just not receptive to that, you have to have somewhere to go.
That's right. That's so good.
Using My Family Wizard, communicating with maybe a counselor, having an open form of communication, and ultimately having a little bit of control over maybe what you say and what you don't say and the way that works. So I'm just so excited that we were able to have this conversation. The last 2 podcasts have been amazing. Dr. Reid, you're truly a blessing to our community, to our world, and I know to your husband and to your children. I'm excited to read your new book.
Oh, thanks.
Unwrapped, Open the Gift of Holiday Sanity, which is just amazing.
Yes.
It's a great book, and I'd highly recommend it if you're watching this to go ahead and grab a copy of that. But thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And we are excited. Blended Kingdom family, thank you for joining in with myself and Dr. Reid. We hope you have a wonderful, blessed, amazing day. We are praying for you and praying that you gain insight in this time of COVID-19, and it's a blessing to your family. So thank you so much. So, you're so good.
Oh, thanks. I was like...